Morning folks, it's James here from Hidden Gems of Zambia again. We want to just thank you for all of you who tuned in to watch our first video. We appreciate the support and the feedback, which has been really encouraging. As we mentioned in the last video, this is the start of 6 short informative videos on different regions of Zambia and how to sell them. And today we're going to be talking about the Kafue National Park. It's one of the most important parts of getting successful packages out of Zambia is using Kafue National Park correctly. But it's also one of the most misunderstood parks, and so we're going to spend a few minutes this morning just working out how exactly you should be selling Kafue National Park, because the safari experience in the Kafue on the whole is quite different to the other major parks of Zambia. It's a lot bigger, and generally speaking the sightings are more sporadic and the game density is slightly lower than what you would expect to find in some of the other parks. Having said that, it has the best variety and diversity of species of all of Zambia's parks. So it's a national park that needs to be explained carefully to manage your client's expectations, but the agents who do that well get very good feedback and they do get more confirmations of their travel packages. I just want to briefly cover 3 important points about why the Kafue National Park should be featuring heavily in your Zambian package offerings. And the first point, that's probably the most important point, is we've analysed the cost of each bed night and what that costs clients in various parts of Zambia. And the Kafue has the best ratio when it comes to the combination of the cost that it will cost you to put your client in a camp, as well as the park fees and the travel expenses to get there. Put it differently, if you've got $500 per night budget, you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of the Kafue, because it is the park that takes up the smallest amount in park fees and travel costs. So that's an important point when planning a trip from a budget point of view. The second factor about the Kafue is it's one of the only major parks in Zambia that can be accessed without the use of charter flights or scheduled charters. You can drive in from Livingston, you can drive in from Lusaka, so really important to have in your plans on a travel package that you don't have to be using and relying on charter flights to access the Kafue. The final point about the Kafue is that within the park it probably has the widest range of activities and the widest range of experiences out of all the national parks in Zambia. It's an enormous park, it covers a variety of habitats and an incredible diversity of species. So an extremely beneficial stop for clients who value diversity and variety. Let's now speak about how you should be selling the Kafue, and we're finding that the easiest thing to do is to put your clients into one of 3 boxes. The first box is the client who's driving in and out and they want to go in for 3 to 5 nights and get out. That kind of client, you're really going to be looking at where they're coming from. That's going to be the most important determining factor as to where you should be looking in Kafue. Obviously, if they're coming from Lusaka, you want to limit your choices to those central river-based properties that are easily accessed by the main road west into Zambia. If the client's in Livingston, you're restricted mainly to the southern Kafue, but it is a quality safari option available to clients in Livingston wanting a 3 to 5 night extension of safari options. If you've got a client who has a higher budget and they're not into the drives, they're looking for a 3 to 5 night safari option but they want to fly in, generally those clients are going to be looking at the Jeffrey and McKeith properties as well as the properties up in the Busanga Plains. Ideally you want to be concentrating around those areas with the higher end clients, and that area particularly out of the whole of the Kafue National Park has probably the highest game density and the highest volume of individuals in any particular sighting of the Kafue. That's generally speaking, but that's where I'd be looking to plan your safari around clients with a slightly higher budget who don't want to take the time to drive in, but are still only going to be going to one camp. The final category that you should be looking at your clients is whether they're multi-camp clients. What I mean by that is, are they looking for an experience in the Kafue National Park that's going to be involving more than one camp? And typically we would see clients staying 6 to 8 nights, and those 6 to 8 nights are going to be split between 2 camps. By far the majority of those packages are going to involve a river-based property and then a plains-based property, either the Busanga Plains in the north or the plains down in the south of the park. But generally that is the best package to offer a variety of experiences, and it's Zambia's closest offering to a wet and dry camp arrangement where the river-based properties are going to give you your boating, your canoeing, as well as your game drives and walks, whereas once you're out in the plains, generally you're going to be limited to your drives and your walks. Having said that, the Kafue is probably the only park in Zambia where you could offer 3, even 4 camps in one national park and guarantee your client to see 3 completely different areas and 3 completely different habitats. It's that big and it's got that much variety. So for a client who's obsessed about visiting one park, it's ideal. But generally, your multi-camp packages are going to be 6 to 8 nights. It's going to be 2 camps, and you're going to want to combine a river-based property with a plains-based camp. And that can be done with clients leaving Livingston, heading up to Lusaka. It could be done from Lusaka, coming back again, or going down to Livingston. So you've got options. There's a lot of options, and they're quality options. Having said all of this, what makes the Kafue so hard to understand, and why do you need to manage your clients' expectations? And there are 3 big points that we need to cover. They're very easy to understand, but they are important to communicate because it helps set the expectations for your client. The first one, which I've touched on, is the game viewing. Generally, and it is a generalization, but generally, the game viewing in the Kafue is about diversity and variety as opposed to high-density wildlife viewing. Typically, the sightings will be more sporadic than what you would expect in Lower Zambezi and South Luangwa, and the number of individuals at any one sighting tends to be lower than what you would see in the other parks. Having said that, that's not a reflection on a poor safari experience at all. I recently came back from the Kafue and I saw 27 different mammal species in one day. So the variety and the diversity that's on offer is absolutely outstanding. And I think you need to encourage your clients to try and make lists to record what they see and just see how many different species they're actually going to encounter through the Kafue, whereas the other parks are going to be about high-density close-up viewings. The second point that needs to be explained to clients when visiting the Kafue, and this applies to them whether they're driving or flying, is it is an enormous park. And so the travel distances between camps and the airport are long. They're going to be in the car for a couple hours if they're driving. A lot of those drives take place through the park, so it's an interesting drive, but they need to understand that the drives are much longer than what they would experience going into the Lower Zambezi or South Luangwa, for example. Finally, and this is something that people either love or they hate, the Kafue is known for having higher densities of tsetse flies. Your clients are either going to be able to handle tsetse flies or they won't, and I think it's very important you establish that up front. The reality on the ground is that the camps do a lot to control the tsetse fly experience, and by and large, it's never something that inhibits someone's trip and someone's safari unless they're allergic or they react to it. Having said that, it helps an enormous amount to tell them about the fact that there could be tsetse flies, and also maybe to explain to them that tsetse flies are an incredibly important part of conservation in Africa. Without tsetse flies, the pressure put on these parks by cattle is significantly increased. So sometimes it helps to explain the greater circle of life to your clients. But if they're not interested in that and they don't want to get bitten, then perhaps reconsider the Kafue, because generally the tsetse fly populations are higher than other parks. Folks, that's everything from us on the Kafue and how to sell Kafue as a region. Please do get in touch with us about specific information on the specific camps, as well as specials that the different camps are offering, seasons. We've got all of that information available for you. And we look forward to chatting to you in the next video where we go west into Western Zambia. Thanks again, folks.